Hey everyone, what's up? How's it going? This is Finite MTG. Today we are going to walk you through another draft log I did. This one I think was pretty difficult to navigate, and I think I did a decent job, and I think the deck ended up really nice. And so with that, let's dive into the picks. So first up here we have Imperial Plate. This is not a card I've played with before, but just from appearance it seems pretty strong. The number of cards in your hand is going to decrease as the game goes on, but at the beginning of the game you have quite a lot of cards in hand. Something I'd like to compare this to would be a Volshock Morningstar, so 2 mana for an equipment that gives +2/+2 and also has equip 2. And I think almost all the time this is going to be better than the Morningstar, and the Morningstar is just a very good card, so the Plate has to be excellent, kind of by just that inference. And otherwise we have a Viridian Longbow, which allows the equipped creature to deal the damage itself. Pinging effects are great in Chaos already, and the fact that this thing combos really nicely with Death Touchers makes it a very strong pick, not to mention another colorless one, but we went with the Plate here. I think this card is unbelievable now that I've played with it. Alright, next up here is another unbelievable card. Hard to imagine what the person passing to me took over it. It's a lot like the white instant in M21. You get to replace a creature effectively with a 4/4 flying token, except this thing has Strive, which means you can target as many things as you have the mana to pay for. So a lot of the time this thing is going to be 5 mana, turn a couple creatures you control into 4/4s with flying. So as if a 4/4 flyer wasn't good enough, you get to have multiple. The card is completely insane. You get to save your stuff from removal, just upgrade a bear, just a random token into this kind of thing. It's an extremely powerful effect, not something that should be passed. Starfish, or Scryfish, I guess, and the Mastiff are nice as well, but not close to the hour in my opinion. Alright, next up things start getting a little trickier. There's a 5 mana 5/5 with a huge downside of not being able to use your hand until it goes away. There's Anger, nice card in Commander, just a 4 mana 2/2 haste that has some nice value for you if you can get it into the graveyard or if you trade it off or whatever. There's Benevolent Bodyguard, and with the Imperial Plate we're really looking to leverage that card in an aggressive strategy. So Benevolent Bodyguard could be the deck, or could be a card for that kind of deck. Otherwise there's a Giant Warthog, 6 mana 5/5 Tramble, just decent stats for Chaos Draft. I ended up going with the Anger, thought it could be some kind of potential signal and didn't want to pass that up. Although I'm not sure the card is the strongest, I think you can make cases for some of the other cards I mentioned. Alright, now in this pack we picked up the Hour of Need, which is the strongest colored card that we have at this point. So we're looking to be in blue if possible, and we have a nice card here in the Mistform Sea Swift. It's a 4 mana 3/1 flyer, and you get to choose the thing's creature type by paying a mana. Seems like an irrelevant ability, but you would be surprised in Chaos Draft how much tribal synergy comes up if you haven't played a lot of Chaos Draft. And so this kind of card and Changelings can really make those synergies a lot stronger. And the fact that this thing is a morph makes it a little less fragile than a 4 mana 3/1 flyer, so all in all, pretty nice pick. Happy to pick up the Sea Swift here. Alright, now in the next pack, there are 2 main cards I'm interested in here. There's an Erratic Explosion. This card effectively deals damage equal to a random non-land card to any target. So if you make sure, in your deck that is, to any target. So if you make sure that you're not playing any 1-drops, you can guarantee 2 damage with this thing. Not unreasonable. Sometimes you can deal more. Being able to go face means you might be able to close off a game by doing that. So it's a nice card for sure. But there's also a Battlefield Medic. This card is a really nice white effect. Makes me think that white could be open. People tend to underrate effects like this, but we did just see a Benevolent Bodyguard too, so we're seeing some decent white cards. I decided to speculate on the Medic, not to mention it works nicely with that Mistform Sea Swift that we just picked up. Alright, now in the next pack, we're looking at red, white, and blue here at this point. The blue cards in this pack are not very appealing to me. We're looking at an Abandoned Reason, which is a nice kind of double combat trick. and a Make Mischief, nice pinging effect that makes another pinging effect, and also a Borrowed Grace, a mass pump spell, which I think is a pretty strong card for a lot of the aggressive decks. And again, with the Imperial Plate, that's the kind of thing we're trying to play. So we've seen the Benevolent Bodyguard, we just picked up the Healer, now we're seeing Borrowed Grace, which I think might be marginally better than the red cards in the pack, so decided to go ahead with that. So right now our only red card is the Anger, and yeah, continuing to pass some decent red cards at this point. Now we see a pack where really nothing is exciting, or even playable for the most part. I was impressed before by Shinewend as a sideboard card, so 2-mana 1/1 flyer that you can use to destroy an enchantment. If your opponent has a lot of enchantment removal, they're not going to want to spend one on this, because then you can just use it to blow up another enchantment. 2-mana 1/1 flyer, not the best. Maybe we can upgrade it with that Hour of Need, or maybe we can pump it up with the +2/+0 effect that we just picked up. So Shinewend here. Now in this next pack, we have a removal spell in white of sorts, except it gives Defender. This is not the kind of thing we want to be giving to a creature, because against our aggressive starts, opponents should be blocking most of the time anyway, if the deck ends up the way we want it. So Guard Duty is kind of redundant, not really an effect we want. There's also a Merfolk Observer, playable blue card, but not a very good one. And I think the best card here for us is a Lava Fume Invoker. So we can pair this with our Anger in terms of red cards, start figuring out exactly which Jeskai color pair we're supposed to be in. And yeah, if you do ever hit the 8 mana, this card is pretty nice. So that's what we took here. Alright, now we wheel a Mirrodin pack with one sideboard card that's pretty nice here in the Detonate, and one card that I think is solid to main deck, and that would be the Soldier Replica. 3-mana 1/3 is a super underwhelming body, but that kind of impeccable timing ability is pretty nice. Not something you would expect to wheel, I think, most of the time, so starting to think that white is a color I should be playing here. Now in the next pack, we see one white card and one red card, and I don't think either of them is particularly playable. I think the Obstinacy is just a worse sideboard card than the Shinewend, so we end up speculating on a Font of Return here, a card that I think is a little more powerful than everything else and just shouldn't be in the pack. Next up, we have a Fire Cat Blitz. X red to make some 1/1s. You can flash it back. It's an awkward card because it wants to go in aggressive decks, but how are you going to get the mana for it? Still, I thought it was better than the other cards here, so I ended up taking it. And remember, we're kind of all over the place in terms of which Jeskai color pair we should be. Red is certainly not off the table. Now we see only one card that could be playable, assuming we are still Jeskai, in the Daru Stinger. We did actually see a Soldier Replica a couple picks ago, and shockingly, Soldier Replica is a soldier, so we could actually get a little bit of value here with the Daru Stinger. Unfortunately, it doesn't work with the Mistform Sea Swift. It can't change its creature type in your hand. But still, as the only on-color card for us, we did end up taking the Stinger. Next up, we wheel a card that maybe we should have just taken the first time. Certainly should not be here, pick 13, which is pretty unbelievable. It's the Erratic Explosion. So this card, 2 in a red, again, to deal some amount of damage to something. Ideally, the minimum number of damage will be 2, but maybe you're dealing as much as 4 damage. Can be a nice way of closing out the game, just kind of a removal spell hidden under a lot of text there. So really nice pickup for us there. Next up, we see Grizzled Angler Wheel. 3-mana 2/3, aka Talarian Scholar, is a totally playable effect, not an exciting one, but being able to flip this thing, it flips, I believe, into a 4/5 that can pay 6 mana and make your opponent's attack. Unfortunately, Magic Flooey is not showing me the other half of the card, so I don't know if I got it right. But again, I think the card is fine. We have the Soldier, the colorless one, to make this thing flip. We have Anger picked, so there's a little bit of synergy there. This is something that could make our deck. Here we get a random 1-mana 1/1. Not really interested in it unless we have a ton of tribal synergy, which I don't think is ever going to happen. Alright, now we're onto this next pack, and things start getting very, very difficult. We have an on-color mythic, but the pick is tough in my opinion because blue is not a color we saw a lot of in pack 1, and we did pick up some blue cards pretty early, so feels like blue might not be very open. The safest pick, in my opinion, is a Senate Griffin, because this card can make our deck no matter which Jeskai color pair we're playing, which is pretty nice if we wanted to go with that. Otherwise, there's an Angelic Exaltation, effectively gives all your creatures exalted, which is kind of cool. And there's also an Impassioned Orator, just a good 2-drop, as well as the Burning Tree Vandal, which is a solid 3. So we ended up going here with the Benthid, despite blue not feeling very open. I thought it was just the strongest card by too much. And I was thinking that, you know, we still have outs to be blue. We're not committed to red-white or anything like that. And I do really like this Benthid, so decided to go with that. Now here in the next pack, things continue to get difficult here. I would say they're increasingly difficult now. We have a Skynight Legionnaire here. If we're thinking that we're in red-white, we have a Metropolis sprite over here. There's also a Massive Raid, which is a removal spell, or something that can go face. That depends on the number of creatures you control. So I really like the Skynight Legionnaire. Thought it was probably the best card for what we could be doing, but what I really didn't like about it is that it pigeonholes us into exactly one of the Jeskai color pairs, where I can play this Metropolis sprite if we go blue-white or if we go blue-red. So that's what I ended up going with here. Pretty similar card because it's another evasive threat that can hit for 2. But yeah, ended up taking the sprite over the Legionnaire now. Alright, now in this pack, things get a little tougher once again. Starting to feel like we're in blue. We picked up that Benthid, we picked up that sprite. Now we have a Repel. Nice tempo-based effect. Instant speed, too, is pretty nice. You can use this on one of your own creatures if you have to, but really you don't want to be doing that. There's a Syncopate, which is a fine interactive card, but there's also just a Flame Burst here. 2 mana for 2 damage to a creature at instant speed. You're almost never getting another card called Flame Burst into your graveyard, and right now I think it might be impossible for us to do so. But just a 2 mana shock to a creature is a pretty strong effect for Chaos Draft, and I told myself, you know what, could take a blue card here and try to solidify myself into that color, which I really want to be playing, but I'd rather just take the card that I think is best for me here. So that's what we did, went with the Flame Burst. And now we get rewarded for trying to go into blue with a nice late Shaper Parasite. So if you play this thing face down and then flip it face up, you get to give something +2/-2. Technically there's some -2/+2 text on there as well, but the +2/-2 is going to act as a removal spell a good chunk of the time, and just having a nice 2-for-1 creature that your opponent doesn't see coming can be very powerful. So yeah, super happy to pick up the Shaper Parasite. Brute Force and Sulfur Elemental, either of those would have been fine. Even the Piracy Charm or the Aquamorph element or entity, all these cards are solid, but the Shaper Parasite is excellent. So that's what we went with. Now in this pack, things are slowing down a little. We have Scornful Egotist, but the idea is it's just a morph, and it's just bad. It's just a gray ogre, pretty much. There's also random 2 mana 2/2 that must attack. We're thinking at this point we could be in red, and just having a 2-drop in general is going to be nice. So it's not the pick I would love to spend on a Goblin Brigand, but it's the pick that we ended up spending on it. So just a 2-drop for our aggressive slanted deck. Now in this pack, we see another couple good cards for us. There's a Sensory Deprivation, not a card you really want in your really aggressive decks unless you have a lot of evasion, but it is just a solid card in general. Otherwise, there's a Skierstag Cultist, a little expensive for the body, but the fact that this thing can use your creatures to kill theirs, kind of an attrition style effect, or just start using your creatures as reach to finish off the game is really nice. It's really, really good against enchantment removal spells like the sensory deprivation, and yeah, it's the card that I ended up going with here. Alright, now in this pack we have a possibly on color rare that's gone pretty late here, and it's tough for me to evaluate this card. I think the idea is it's sort of a sweeper, but it's a situational one. You can use it to finish off the game in terms of the damage it can deal. Otherwise, 2 mana 2/2, sort of, in the soul summons. Ugin's Conjurant, card that doesn't make you sacrifice something if you don't have any colored permanents in play. But it seems pretty awkward to try to play this thing without putting a single colored permanent into play, because it's a 4-drop. So I ended up going here with the Arc Bond. It was kind of a speculative pick, not necessarily something every aggressive deck wants, but just a card that might be able to finish off the game. Next up here, we get a very nice pack for us with 2 solid blue cards. 5 mana 1/4 Bounce Something is not the worst card of all time, but it isn't the best in an aggressive style deck. On the other hand, we have Inspiration, aka Divination, that is 1 more but is an instant, and the card is just totally solid. 4 mana is the right price for this kind of effect, and I'm going to be happy to play this in every single one of my blue decks. Alright, now we wheel a Burn Bright and an Impassioned Orator. Starting to think I'm in red at this point. I picked up some red removal spells in this pack, and we have picked up, I think, 0 white cards, or almost 0 white cards, so I end up going here with the Burn Bright. We already have that similar effect in white, so if we don't end up playing white, it'd be nice to get something like this in red. And speaking of red removal spells, we wheel another red removal spell here in the Massive Raid. So this thing is a bit conditional, but if you're able to get 2 or 3 creatures in play, or especially if you're able to get more than that, this card is really quite nice. The most annoying thing about it, in my opinion, is that it's double red. But yeah, just a solid card here. Nice one to wheel. Now we have this pack where we have 4 mana blow up a land with super expensive flashback, 1 mana 1/1 flyer, but bad ability. And we have a Phantom Whelp. So 2 mana 2/2 drawback, not a card I am ecstatic to pick here, but all in all, I think this card could make our deck. It is a bit clunky, but if we're just using it mainly as a blocker to trade off, that's fine. I'd like to start with it in the sideboard, but that was my choice there. Now we have a super easy Piracy Charm here. This thing can kill an X1. You can use it on your opponent's draw step to make them discard a card. It's a very rare instant speed discard spell. And there's also a bit of text on there about Island Walk. So all in all, decent card. Could make my deck. Main problem right now is I have that 3 mana red sorcery that cares about converted mana costs of a random card from my deck. So if I do end up playing a 1 mana card, suddenly I'm not guaranteed 2 damage out of that effect, which could be a little problematic. Next up here we have Dragon Breath, which is a fire-breathing card of sorts. It gives haste as well. There's just a random unplayable red card, so that was our choice. I don't think we're going to play it, but we could. Then we take a Nevermore, which is kind of fine, out of the sideboard. And we have a 15th pick, Refocus. Not a card I'm super happy about, but maybe we get some tap abilities, and then it turns out to be a fine card for us. So, pack 3, pick 1 here. We have some nice on-color cards. At this point, I'm thinking I'm probably not in white. We started thinking that we were in blue, then we took a red card, then we found our way into white and got some white cards late in pack 1, but now I'm thinking that I'm probably just blue-red. In this pack we have a bunch of good cards. We have the Sea Dasher Octopus, Avian Oddity, Farfinder, Capture Sphere, And yeah, those are just the on-color ones. The Lava Serpent and Spell Eater are decent as well. But I went here with the Sea Dasher Octopus. The thing that this has Flash is really nice in my opinion. Makes it very easy to get that first card if you're mutating it or just casting it. And yeah, if you're able to get multiple cards with this thing, it can just win you a game. It's a little bit like the Thieving Otter from the same set, but I think this card is a lot better thanks to that Flash and mutate flexibility. So that was my choice here over some other solid options. Now in this pack, we see an amazing red card here in the Magma Burst. So 4 mana for 3 damage to any target, but kicker sack 2 lands, deals another 3 to any target. But it has to be a different target. So there's no 4 mana sack 2 lands, dome you for 6 or that kind of thing. But this card is just a really nice card. I will call it a 2-for-1 even though it costs you a couple lands technically if you're kicking it. Magma Burst is just not a card in general you should pass. This is pack 3, so I understand that things happen, but very happy to pick it up. Now in this pack we have a really nice kind of combat trick effect here in the Silvergill Douser. 2 mana for a 1/1, but you get to shrink a creature by X, where X is the number of merfolk and fairies you control. And we do have that Metropolis Sprite, which is a fairy. We have the Sea Swift, which can change types, work nicely with this Douser. So this card is pretty good. Happy enough to pick it up here. All right, next up here, we have a couple good options for us. I ended up going here with the Sarkins Rage. This is 5 mana for 5 damage to any target, which is really, really nice at instant speed, so you can use it as removal, you can use it as a lava axe, and it does deal 2 to you. But remember, since we are doing our best to be the aggressor here, not too worried about that 2 extra damage, and thinking I could wheel something like an Anticipate or maybe a Reduce in stature. Alright, now we have a super tough pick, in my opinion. So we have a few spells for the Piston Fist Cyclops, but we don't have anywhere near 8 or 9 that we're looking to main deck, so I don't think it's a card we're guaranteed to be able to attack with very often. There's a Barging Sergeant, which is fine, Radical Idea and Sure Strike, which are both fine. Disdainful Stroke, which I would prefer out of the sideboard. There's also a Hypothesis here, so this card is really nice, but I also think it's a bit overrated. Pretty much this card is a 1-for-0 because, you know, you play it, you draw 2 cards, you discard one of them, so you played this card, you drew and kept 1 card, and you effectively milled one other one, so yeah, you cycled and you killed something. But the problem is you do have to discard a spell to be able to do that, otherwise it's just inspiration, but an extra red to cast. I like this card, and I think there's a chance the Piston Fist wheels here. It's not an amazing chance. There are some stinkers in the pack for sure, but I decide to take it here to try to make sure that if we do wheel the Piston Fist, it's going to be attack a little bit more often because we have 1 more spell in our deck. Now we have another insanely difficult pick, and I just stared at this pack for a long time because I kind of wanted to take the whole thing and just be done with the draft. So we have a Kenra Scrapper if we want to go for the strategy of take the only card of a certain color because there are a bunch of cards in the other color and maybe one of them wheels. That's an option. However, remember our deck is supposed to be aggressive, and we've picked up some 2-drops like the Goblin Brigand, which is 2 mana 2/2 must attack. And also the Phantom Whelp, which is 2 mana 2/2. If it attacks or blocks, it returns to hand. So we're really, really looking for better 2-drops. So that kind of narrows the pick for me to a Riddle Form or a Spellweaver Eternal. But just like the Piston Fist Cyclops, I'm feeling like we're a tad low on spells for the Riddle Form that I'm very excited about. And the Spellweaver is going to be good no matter what. The Afflict is really nice at killing opponents, and Prowess is just a nice thing to have on a creature, so I ended up taking a Spellweaver Eternal. It was a really, really difficult pick was not sure whether I was making the right one, but another reason that I made this pick is because we have that very strong equipment that we first picked, and that thing works so much better with an actual 2-drop than something that's only a creature part of the time. Alright, now we see an extremely late Scour All Possibilities, 2 mana for a preordain effect, and it has flashback for 4 and a blue. This card is amazing. Suddenly I'm regretting passing the Piston Fist and passing the Riddle Form, because this card would be amazing, again, in a deck with those two. But it's just going to be very, very good regardless. Now in this pack, we have another easy pick. Sword of the Meek, totally fine effect. It's really close to Riot Gear, but we have a 5 mana 3/3 flyer here, which we could additionally play face down, but since we're not planning on playing white, we're not going to be able to unmorph it. There's also a Logic Knot, which would be better in a more reactive deck, and Henchfiend, which is red, but with black kicker is going to be out of the question for us. So nice Whipspine Drake here. Alright, now the Ikoria pack wheels, and there's an Avian Oddity still in it. 4 mana for a 2/4 flyer is a good rate for Chaos Draft, and cycling for 2 and a blue to put a flying counter on something is pretty reasonable. Nice with the Sea Dasher Octopus in more than one way, and yeah, I'm just happy to get it back. Sorry to the Spell Eater Wolverine and the Lava Serpent, but just going to take the blue card here. Now we have some on-color fixing, which in general I would be very excited to get, especially this late, but it does force you to return a land to your hand. In a deck that's so aggressive, I don't think that I would be playing a land that forces me to return a land I control to my hand, unless I have like multiple landfall creatures in my deck or something like that. So I took the Croesus's Catacombs here, but did not end up putting it in my deck. Alright, now we pick up a 6 mana 6/4. This card can be playable. This is not really the deck for it. It's just the deck is already too good in my opinion, and this thing is way too expensive, but it was a non-color card. Now we're actually faced with a surprisingly difficult pick here. Pick 12. We have this thing, which can potentially answer bombs, which is pretty nice, even though in general I don't love cards that do this. And we also just have an Anticipate. Anticipate is a totally fine card. You can always use it to find something better. If we had like the Piston Fist or the Riddle Form, we could do really crazy things with those. But unfortunately, we did pass those. I still end up taking the Anticipate though. It's just a nice card. Now we're able to pick up a Sure Strike here from the pack with the Piston Fist Cyclops. Unfortunately, it did not wheel, but Sure Strike is a very nice trick, so definitely considering playing that one. Now something completely unbelievable happens, and we wheel the Riddle Form. Pick 14. It's 2 mana for something that can repeatedly Lava Spike your opponent. It could even come alive on their turn to block, and it's a mana sink that lets you scry. When I got this Riddle Form back, I was thrilled. I thought this thing is one of the better cards in my deck. I got it disrespectfully late. I didn't even deserve to get it because I passed the thing in the first place. And yeah, that's just about all I can say about that pick. And pick 15, we get a Snow-Covered Island, which is nice and pretty, but don't want to actually run it in our deck. Could end up giving away some information by doing that. So in terms of deck building, this is how the deck ended up. It was insanely powerful. I ended up trophying with it, second trophy in a row for today, which I was really, really happy about. Beat Amaz along the way, improving my lifetime record against him to 4-1. And this deck, again, it was just really, really great. The one card that I was disappointed by was the Silvergill Douser. This is something I'm actually starting to notice a little more often in general. The really good effects that mess up combat get a lot worse if you're not trying to play a defensive deck. If you're trying to play a deck that kills the opponent as quickly as possible, sometimes you don't really want to play a 2-mana 1/1, even if it nerfs your opponent's creatures on blocks or on attacks regardless. And so I ended up playing the Massive Raid over that one, and that was a pretty sketchy choice in my opinion. If you look, you can see we're playing only 16 lands, only 7 mountains, and 2 double red cards in the deck, but the Massive Raid really performed quite nicely. And another reason I think I'm able to get away here with that low mountain count is because we have both Anticipate and Scour all possibilities. We also have the Riddle Form that can scry. Hour of Need was amazing in this deck. I used the Grizzled Angler to mill the Anger once. I think I put the Sea Dasher Octopus onto an Avian Oddity at one point. The Benthid was amazing. Sarkins Rage finished out a bunch of games, and Magma Burst stole a game I think I otherwise could not have won. But of course, best card in the whole deck was the Imperial Plate, the card that I was not particularly certain about because I'd never seen it before, had not played with it, and I knew that the Viridian Longbow was really nice. Yeah, this card's a bomb. This card is probably the main reason this draft went 3-0. So yeah, with that, thank you all for watching. I hope you have enjoyed. I really had a lot of fun with this deck. It was super powerful, and the Riddle Form wheel, once again, was just unbelievable. So yeah, I hope you've enjoyed this video, despite no matches being included, and I'll see you soon.